this food. You like jollof rice, right?
Yep, I'll try it now. Hello guys, welcome to the Sambaza Podcast live show, and today we're going to have Owochi of the regular podcast, right?
Absolutely, the regular show podcast.
The regular show podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome to the show anytime. Now, tell us about your podcast, what it's all about.
The regular show podcast is really, and you can see this from the artwork, it's a podcast where we're discussing blackness in different contexts, from the Nigerian, or I say African, but specifically Nigerian context, and also blackness from the American context. And we find like a bridge between that, or not even necessarily trying to bridge it, but just being able to share those experiences, sharing common goals and seeing how we can get there. So we talk about relationships, right? We'll every now and then talk about politics, but mostly like relationship with self and relationships between black men and black women in America. Those are the kind of things that we like to talk about. We also talk about Afro beats as well. So we try not to be on heavy topics, but sometimes we definitely got to delve into the real life stuff. But that's a summary of what it is we talk about.
How long have you been podcasting?
I've been podcasting since about like 2018, 2019. It's hard for me to really pinpoint when exactly I started podcasting, and that's because the podcast was in my head way longer, like before it finally came into fruition. Because I spent so much time trying to figure out how I was going to start it on a perfect note until I realized that I was wasting my time just thinking about it instead of just doing. So I want to say at least officially like 2018, 2019. 2019 was when things really kicked off, and probably like 3 years deep.
What has been your major challenge with podcasting? Because I know a lot of podcasters start off and then kind of get into some challenges here and there and then decide podcasting ain't for them. What has been your challenge so far?
Okay, so when I started a podcast, I already knew like I don't want it to just be me. I don't just want to be hearing myself talk. I'm with myself all the time. If I wanted to do that, I just chill. But I wanted to get other people's opinions. I wanted to get other people's perspectives. I wanted people to challenge my views, that kind of thing. I wanted to learn. And in order to learn, you have to have other people around you. Not just other people, but people of substance. People who have something to share with you and something to say. So in doing that, it meant that I needed co-hosts. Now, the problem is people have all kinds of life stuff going on. So that consistency was like a very hard thing for me. It was very frustrating at first because I was like, what is it? Like, these are my friends I'm talking about on campus, and people would ghost on me or flake on me and not just say anything. I'd see them any other day and it was just like supposed to be cool. So it was very frustrating for me because in my head I pictured us just doing this thing the same way boys just sit down and talk. It would just be the same way with a microphone. But that was when I realized, and this is just the way I look at life, anything that you want out of life, it starts from within. And as much as you have to work with other people to make it happen, depending on other people will only end up in disappointment. So I had a conversation with my mentor, and she said, listen, it's your show. You're the one who owns the podcast. It's not your show. So its success is on you. It's not on them. She was like, figure out how to make that work because you are the regular show. When she sat down, I thought about it. I was like, you know what, you're right. And I named it the regular show because at the point I was in my life, I was in school. With those kind of assignments and stuff, it's very hard to maintain consistency. Secondly, I was finding out, unfortunately, my friends were flakes. That's not a very good feeling because these are, you want to be around dependable men, but whatever the case, it is what it is. So I say that to say this. I made that the show because it was a reflection of my reality, right? Meaning that I'm the only constant on the regular show, which is why I have so many co-hosts. Because at different times and intervals, people be like, oh, I'm not available, I can't make it, or they're not able to participate in a certain conversation. And so I just have my other friends come in and fill out for them. It's just one of them things. So that was the biggest thing at my beginning. I know podcasters might be struggling with that as well. I've heard of podcasters' friendships ending because of that kind of inconsistency. And I want to say if you have that kind of struggle, just figure out a way to make it work if you want it that bad. Anything else after that is the time and energy that goes into production. When you're editing your content by yourself and like having to go back, and especially if you have ears for a certain kind of quality and you just want it, even if the fans don't care, it's about you as a podcaster. What do you want? What do you want to feed your audience? So that part of it is like very time consuming. The money used to be an issue, sort of, kind of, but it's part of my routine now because I think about it. If I can go out for a steak dinner by myself and spend X amount of dollars on some food that's not going to be in my system like 2-3 days from now, how much more in my own podcast, which is my baby and my investment, and that when I put that content out there, it's like always accessible. So, yeah. So that time and energy, man, and that burnout, like mentally too.
What do you enjoy being an African podcaster? What makes you so unique?
Yeah. First of all, I have to say I love being black and African. Right? If I were to die and reincarnation is a thing, I would come back as a black man because I just love it. And I think that alone in itself like tells a lot of stories because we live in America, in a place where a lot of people tend to think that there's a monopoly on blackness. But you come here, you start to get a better picture of the black experience. And that's one thing that really like excites me. And I think that something that is unique is the fact that we're not really PC on our podcast. Like we say it how it is, how we feel it. More recently, because of like interest of the people that have come on, I've had to kind of make a little bit of an adjustment for your own sake, because people will say something on the fly, and when you have too much time to think about stuff and you're listening to it back before we post it, it's like, okay, I don't really want that on there, which I'll respect that, but for the most part we're not like being PC or anything. We say it how it is, and we're talking about our lives, and we don't really care about backlash or anything like that. So I think that really makes us unique, and it makes the conversations so very refreshing, especially when everybody else around you is on the same page.
Okay. And I just had a conversation with you before this, and your co-host. You have a diverse amount of co-hosts from different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
How has that helped the podcast?
Well, it's helped it in so many different ways. Because when everybody's bringing reality to your platform.
Yeah, it was very, very real.
Very real. Like, too real. My man had to put down his phone. He was like, okay. It's like real, but it's just that real. Like, very little filter. And when people are bringing your own life perspective, again, it's about me learning. So I'm sitting there and I'm hearing, and I'm like, wait, that actually really happens? We're just talking about, like, the difference between dating somebody that's white and dating somebody that's black, and the things that we don't think of that happen to us every day on a societal level, and how that plays a part in the heaviness or lightness of the relationship. I was like, I never really thought about it in that way, but I just literally like 15 minutes ago, I just learned something new. So just having those people, again, the motivation is because a lot of times you're looking for answers. People are looking for answers, so what you're doing is venting, you're talking about your issues, and you're hoping to get some kind of feedback. So we're just just talking, and there's a microphone and a camera in front of us. That is what makes it very unique. That is what makes that's what makes the podcast so good. I have a Haitian American here this time. That I have somebody that is a Black American, but they're Muslim, or I've had a South African girl on there before. I've had a Latino on the platform before. I've had Mexican men on the podcast before. And everybody is talking about their own experiences, so that it's not like, even though it's mainly for Black people, the message that we're sending out is like, you also understand that there's diversity in that, in those experiences, and that makes for very good content.
Now, is there a topic that you have gone in to and come out and said, you know what, I came in there blindly, but out of it I got some very good information? Maybe you want to bring it out to the people and say, like, you know what, this is one topic that I really, really enjoyed.
I think it's a variety of topics, but they're like all tied to the same thing, and it's just the concept of what it means to improve our situation as Black people in America, as a community. Anytime we have those kind of conversations about what it is that we're doing right and what it is that we're not doing right and what it is that we can improve on, those definitely like hit me differently, because even though it's kind of like an every man for himself type of thing, but I definitely want to see my people win, because if everybody else is winning, I'm winning too, by default. which is why, of course, we're also doing Pod Break, right? It's part of the reason we're doing that, because as a community, as an African podcasting community, we want better for ourselves, and together we want better for each other. So yeah, those kind of topics. I can't say there's one specific topic that really like hit me. I might have to go back in the archives and listen. When you have like over 70 episodes, it starts getting hard to keep track of what was said when and where and who was on it and that kind of thing. But definitely like the heavier pro-black conversations, absolutely, because you understand that we can talk about this all we want, but at the end of the day, the action has to be there.
I hope people are not going to be scared, because we have a lot of noise. I just like the ambience about it.
I like that natural noise. The birds chirping. You have the ambulance and stuff like that.
And
it's
the planes
nice
outside too, right?
That's the point. That's where we're sitting in this nice patio over here.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're doing the Pod Break.
Yes.
Now, together with Pod Break, as you come together with other podcasters, how do you feel going forward? Your podcast will become a force to reckon with amongst the African Americans.
You said the podcast being recommended, you said?
No, being a force to reckon with.
A force to reckon with.
Yeah, man.
Ooh, how do I feel about like what the chances of that? Okay, can you rephrase the question?
Okay. Once we get done with Pod Break
Okay.
and leave here, how will it help your podcast be a force in the
Sorry, I had a little bit of a brain freeze there. You asked the question right the first time. Well, I think it's already helping me, because Steven and I just met for the first time yesterday. Right, we had a nice long car ride together where we stopped and got some food and some supplies. And halfway into that trip,
who's Steven? We have Sambaza for the Sambaza podcast.
I apologize.
You're fine.
Sambisa. I had the privilege of sharing a ride with Sambaza, and I think like halfway into the trip, we started talking, and you would have thought we were like high school buddies or something.
Yeah, it was.
You know, and I think that was just really dope. You look at like the fact that Sambaza is repping East Africa. I'm West African. You know, the age difference is there. He's in a whole nother sphere of his life where he's established. He has a wife and his kids. You know, he's building. Sambaza is part of that legacy that he's building, and I'm kind of, you know, he's where I'm at. He's been there, done that. You know, but still being able to have those conversations, and the respect is there without anybody belittling the other and anything like that. And just like the way I process things, and just learning from other people and your own experiences, you know, when we're talking about an East African man who came here years ago to make things better for himself, getting married to a Black American woman, having those kids, and like what goes into that, teaching them about home and safety and, you know, their identity and their roots and that kind of thing. That's very powerful stuff that is missing in a lot of families. You know, so again, you take that and you're listening to somebody, you're paying attention to what it is that they're saying, you're soaking in the game, because again, people don't know it sometimes, but they're giving you game in just casual conversations. You take that in, and of course you apply it, because they say knowledge is power, but it's only power when the knowledge is applied. And so that's one of those things. So just the communication part of it, man, just sitting down and vibing. That's one thing that people tell me all the time, the fact that I just listen, and especially when I'm in good company. So how is that not gonna improve the quality? You know, when I'm like shouting out Kenya now, you know what I'm saying, I'll just, instead of saying shout out Kenya, I'll say shout out Sambaza, because as far as I'm concerned, that's the Kenyan president. And maybe I will get like, you know, a few more Kenyan fans from doing that. So just the opportunity to sit here and be with like good people and share a good conversation, it definitely improves what it is that we have going on, and it feeds me emotionally and spiritually as well, which re-energizes me to do what it is that I do best on the Irregular Show podcast. So thank you for that.
Okay. 5 years from now, where do you see this podcast being at? Do you see yourself monetizing, reaching out to, which continents are you looking at in terms of your reach?
In terms of my reach, man, Africa, I have a good Nigerian audience, but I want Africa. Like I want to have Africa in the chokehold. You know, I have a nice, decent sized American. I want to have Africa in the chokehold. Listen, who would you rather have choking you, the white man or one of your own? I definitely want Africans. I want to be known in Africa, because coming from there, like, and understanding the difference between our mentality there and the Western experience and all that kind of stuff, I really want to be able to help my people back home. Over here, people have like way more resources than I did growing up in Nigeria. I know this for a fact. So I know that people on the continent need the information more than I do, or more than some of us here do. So that's why I definitely see it being like 5 years out. That's what I hope is going to happen. That's what I know is going to happen, because I'm going to make it happen. As far as monetization is concerned, the money is going to come, because one thing that I've learned is, like, if you work on putting out your best work, people will come to you. You know, so in 5 years, I want to be in that position where I'm not even. If anybody says, "Oh, we're chasing the bag," I'm like, I'm not chasing anything. The bag is coming to me, because they see what it is that we're doing here, which is again part of the idea of Podbreak. I also see myself being like highly involved in like media, being a tastemaker for music. That's one thing that I've been dabbling into. A few artists have been hitting me up, telling me about your projects. They send me their unreleased music, waiting for feedback. And that's because they trust what it is that I. Yeah. So.
This is gonna be part of that where we edit. Okay, so you have some artists. You should get some artists. Like I don't know. Maybe I might recommend T-Base.
Okay.
I'll give you the information, because I interviewed him and he's from Nigeria and he's very good. He's upcoming and he's actually very good. What do you advise the African podcaster? Because we're going to base my YouTube shows are actually for the podcast, the African podcaster. How do you see yourself? How do you tell an African podcaster to go out there? Because there's equipment issues, bare minimum, you all have those things, and like I said, my main thing is we want to tell our stories the way we want to tell them, not somebody else coming to tell stories from, tell or represent us in telling those stories.
Right. I mean, I think a big part of the conversations we've been having on and off camera is the fact that we as people, and historically we failed at this, we don't stay in control of our own narrative, right? Sambaza was talking earlier about, when the money comes, or where the men in suits come, and they want to do this and do that. You have to stay in control of your own narrative, man. And just use what it is that you have. I was just in Nigeria not too long ago, and I understand like the stress of having to work and make a living while also being committed to a podcast, right? That's almost like having two full-time jobs, especially in an environment like that where you're dealing with like the lack of, there's insecurity, then there's lack of electricity and all these other things. So just start with what it is that you have. Like, you don't need complicated equipment. We're blessed to be able to have all these cameras right now in front of us, but we all started somewhere. We didn't all just start with these cameras here. We didn't all just start with all this HD equipment and this kind of network. When I started off with my Android phone. Don't let anybody.
And you in America?
Yeah, in America. Don't let anybody deceive you. There's nothing wrong with Androids. I have an iPhone now and I don't see the hype. All the time I had an Android phone, this is like a little off rant, but all the time I had an Android, iPhone users would act like they were superior, and now I have the iPhone and I'm like, this is it? Anyway, there's a reason why the Apple is already bitten into and it's not full. So just start with what it is that you have. Even if you don't have the best phone for recording and you're looking to do that, understand that podcasting is an investment. If you're just trying to do it for fun, then you don't have to worry about any of these things. But if you have a goal and you're thinking bigger and you want to actually capture audiences, then invest in yourself, because if you don't, nobody else will.
Amen.
That is the
Amen.
truth.
Amen.
So stay in control of your narrative, invest in yourself, and just do the best that you can with what you have. Don't stress it. Everything will come together eventually.
I like what you have said. And to wrap it up, as usual, I have to ask you 5 questions, even though you always have the funniest questions. I just have to ask these questions.
All right.
Fun questions.
Sweet.
You're on the hot seat.
Okay.
If you could change form, which would you choose? To swim with the dolphins or to fly with the eagles?
Ooh, definitely to fly with the eagles.
All right.
I want to fly with the eagles, man. Like, I want to see like what do eagles, like, how is it that an eagle can be up so high and like spot like a snake or something on the ground, just swoop down, grab it and go back up? I like that. You know, like they're so high up there and they're like above us. You know what I'm saying? I think that's actually pretty cool.
All right. Next question. Which one would you choose? To have chronic diarrhea or to have projectile vomiting?
Nah, projectile vomiting is not it. I'll do the diarrhea. You know, like you know, because I can work remotely from the toilet seat and just like keep pooping. But we're vomiting is like every time, like you know what I'm saying. You can be in church and they'll call you to give testimony on the pastor, and don't nobody want. And you go out to eat and it's like you know, like at least most public places have toilets, you know, and so you can rock that. But the vomiting, absolutely not. So yeah, give me shit all day.
All right. Last one. Which would you choose? To skip all Christmases or to skip every birthday?
Like not celebrated?
Yeah, pretty much.
Easy. I'll skip Christmas. Shout out to Jesus, but you know. I mean, come on.
This thing just goes way off.
But you know, as I'm getting older though, like I celebrate my life, but my birthday is not like I don't expect other people to hype up my birthday like that. You know what I'm saying? It's just. It's not just another day, but it's just like I celebrate it, so it doesn't really matter what else is going on. But I choose my birthday before any other person's birthday. It's just one of the. I'm an asshole, I know.
Okay.
So I'll skip Christmas.
All right. So, thank you for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. This was fun. This was definitely fun. I appreciate you.
We have the ambience. We had a dog. We had planes.
Yeah, got away from the cold too. Man. The temp is a lot. It's so much nicer out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many rooms to shoot content.
All right.
Yeah, I like that about here. So
always give your handles. Tell us your handles.
Oh yes. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Okuchi. That's OKWUCH 3 I's. OKWUCHIII on Twitter, Instagram. On YouTube, you can find the regular show videos on my channel Okuchi Oka. That's OKWUCHI OKAA. Find the regular show on Instagram and Twitter at just the number 1, the regular show. On Twitter and Instagram. I like to keep it consistent.
Nice.
Tap in.
Nice. One thing we're gonna go off. Who is your market? I mean, which people listen to? When you go check your statistics.
Yes.
Who are the people who watch your show?
Eesh.
What age group? And which country? Because I know you can find that.
Yes.
Just give me the country and the age group.
I can't pull out the stats right now.
Right.
But
Last time you check.
Mostly the U.S. and Nigeria.
Okay.
And like I'll see like stuff from Canada, and then I'll see stuff from like the islands and stuff like that. I see stuff like that. I've seen people in like Iraq and stuff like I'm like they let y'all listen to this kind of stuff anyway. But my audience definitely is like mostly male. If I had to take a guess, I would say like Africans in the diaspora, because whenever we have conversations about masculinity and the hardships that we face as men, and like especially when it comes to conversations about women and dating, those do really good numbers. The last episode that I did that was like really huge. We were talking about a lot of things. We talked about what's the word I'm looking for? Misogyny in the music industry, right? We're talking with N6, a radio personality in Nigeria. He's been around for a minute. We talked about that. We talked about his personal abuse, and yeah. So usually the stuff about like women and dating and stuff like that, usually, but also the really controversial stuff, right? Which is why I think people enjoy my host CC so much. Not that she seeks to be controversial, but her delivery is just like, dude, like, did she really just say that? And I'm just there sitting, just asking questions.
I think we need to bring CC. We'll bring CC in, and then she'll have a conversation.
Absolutely, she's fun.
Have because she's your co-host. We're gonna have her next, and have both of you just give us something about your podcast and what's going on.
Just sitting there, like, helping me realize just how, like, good our chemistry is. Because she and
you guys have good chemistry.
We have very great chemistry. We haven't recorded together in a while, too. So, like, just sitting there and just,
never
like...
skipped a beat. Never skipped a beat.
Man, listen, it was just like, it was just like that.
All right.
So, again, that's another way that pod break has just helped me, just... Not that I didn't appreciate it, but it's just... Yeah, it's one thing when you're sitting in the studio familiar with... But we're all the way in Beverly Hills. Different crowd. She just stepped in. She hasn't met anybody else well, only Tone she's met, Tone and I, and she just sat there and just like freely, and everybody, she's talking to everybody, just like, like, you know, like, or, you know, and that's dope. So I get to ask the right questions, she gets to give me the nice answers, and we make magic happen.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to the show, and it was a pleasure having you.
For even more content for the podcast.